Hello again, YouTube, for Hot Targaryen here. I am joined by the one and only.
Podrew over here. So I didn't know if you were you want me to intro myself, huh? That's how we're doing
Yeah, since it's only the two of us, and
it.
I might as well
Far
do.
out. I want all my credits listed out. Go over all my subscriber numbers and everything on my channel. No,
I'll
yeah,
do what I can. I'll do the best that I can. So,
Podrew over here for the threequel, the third in the trilogy of Marvel TV shows, right? The
yes.
Disney Plus Marvel
Good to have
TV
you
shows.
back. Yup. You were with me when we reviewed Wanda Vision for the first time. Then we
Mm-hmm.
reviewed Falcon and the Winter Soldier together. And now we're doing Loki, which I think off the record when we spoke about this was the show you were the most excited for because you're more of a comedy guy, more of a casual superhero fan. So you were really into it because of Tom Hiddleston, the actor, his comedic timing and just the premise
Yeah,
of the show Loki.
yeah, and I guess I mean I saw the I did I think when we spoke about that, I think it was on the record actually. It was probably during our last review, maybe because I think the preview had come out at that time, the trailer, and I was like, oh, this looks pretty good from the trailer. But in general, yeah, if before I'd seen any of these shows, just like if I had to pick one, only one to watch, WandaVision, Loki, or Falcon Winter Soldier, just based on what I knew about the characters already. I for sure I would have picked Loki. Like WandaVision, I didn't really care about those characters, and then the show is pretty good, so now I care more about them. Falcon, I mean, same thing with Falcon and Winter Soldier, basically. But Loki, I was already like, oh, he's an entertaining character, you know. And like you said, Tom Hiddleston's a good actor and everything. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So the thing about Loki, the character, I mean, we're gonna be talking about him for the next hour or so, however long this video is going to be. But Tom Hiddleston, the actor, is a good actor, and Loki, the character, is also a good actor sometimes. So, like, some of the
Hmm.
shit that the character
The
pulls.
character's a good actor.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like it's twofold watching this show, right? But
Mm-hmm.
speaking of Loki, this show was really, really popular. I remember telling you about Falcon, right? That show broke the records, whatever records Disney Plus had for original shows. I think the last show was The Mandalorian. Now, I'm not a Star Wars guy, but I know that that was a really popular show on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Falcon beat whatever records it had of like views or watching, and I'm pretty sure Loki has topped both of the previous MCU shows, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in terms of like watching and popularity in general. I think Loki's at the top now. It's the most talked about out of all of them, I think.
Yeah, I think it would make sense because I think more people are like me too, where if beforehand, I think that was a more popular character than the other ones, probably from the movie, from the MCU movies. And then also it's the third one, so people are building up to it now. It makes sense. I think that makes complete sense. Yeah.
That is true. Yeah. Loki, the character, as far as this franchise has gone, this franchise is like 12 years old now, right? And out of these three
Mm.
shows, Loki has been the longest lasting character throughout it. He was introduced in the first Thor movie. I don't know if you saw that one, but that's where he was introduced. Then he
I
was,
did a long time ago. Yeah, I don't really remember very much about it, but yeah,
I mean, it was 10 years ago, 2011, that movie came out. So,
yeah,
but that was his debut in this franchise. Then, of course, he was the main villain of the Avengers movie, which was
right, right.
technically what takes place before this show. And then he went on to become a side villain in the next Thor movie, which I remember you saying The Dark World. You weren't really a fan of
I
that.
don't like that one. Yeah, it's not. I don't think that one's very good. Yeah, but
But
um,
he
and
was
then he wasn't in Ragnarok, right?
he wasn't Ragnarok. What do you
He
mean?
was. I don't remember.
He
I
was,
remember we saw that together
yeah,
though,
yeah.
but I don't remember. I don't remember Loki being in it. I guess I don't. I mean, like we'll find out, and when I talked about it in our last reviews, like I don't pay that close attention. Or like most of the Marvel movies, I kind of watch them. Like most of them, I'm like, oh, it's pretty good, or I enjoy my time, but I'm not like soaking up the world. I'm not so into the lore or anything like
That's
that.
fine. No, I get
I
that.
haven't rewatched a lot, so I don't remember a lot of the details. But Loki wasn't the main. He wasn't a villain in that one, right? Or he
He
wasn't one of
wasn't
the
the
main villains.
main villain. He wasn't a villain at all. He was not a villain at all, but he was a main character. He was with
Okay.
Thor almost the entire time. We first see
Huh.
him, he's impersonating Odin, right? He just has the appearance of Odin, but Thor can see through that because he knows that he's
Yes, that's
faking it.
right. I do
There was also a
remember.
Matt Damon cameo right in the beginning. Remember? Like right,
Yeah, they're on the play, like doing
yeah,
the play, right? Yeah.
right.
I
And
think I
then,
saw on the next Thor movie. I think he's back because like I think there was some stills or something I saw on Twitter or something of like Matt Damon back there. So I think they're gonna be recurring that play thing or actors or whatever.
If that were to be a thing,
Next
then I
movie.
think it would be in the next Doctor Strange movie, which is subtitled Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe it's that. Yeah.
Which we will talk about like way later on. But like, okay, going into a deep dive of this show, I really didn't like it. I'd go so far as to say I might have hated it more than Captain America Civil War. Yeah, this show was.
Sorry, you hated it more than what?
Captain America: The Civil War.
But you also hated that movie? I'm trying to remember if we talked about that.
We didn't, but I did a review of it and I gave it a 5 out of 10. So you can bet your ass I'm going to give Loki a lower score than that.
I think I liked that one better. I definitely liked that one better than the last Avengers movie, Endgame.
Really?
If I recall. But I don't know if I think it was like whatever.
What, Civil War?
Yeah, Civil War.
Oh,
that's when Ant-Man gets real big and like the thing, right? The first time we see him go big, and like that's the first movie Spider-Man's in, I think, right? Of MCU.
Yep.
Yeah. That at least that whole set piece was good. I guess that's the memorable part of it. Yeah. So I mean, I already knew your opinion that you didn't like the show because we were texting a little bit about it, but I like the show. Like comparing it to the other two, I don't think it was better than WandaVision. I did like it more overall than the Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier. It felt more like a TV show to me than the other two also. And you even saw at the end, they said, like, I wasn't sure. I didn't know that if it was going to be a next season or not. But then they say we'll return in season 2. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Because it did feel to me a little bit more like actual show rather than one long movie, you know. Which is definitely what Falcon and Winter Soldier felt like. And then WandaVision was kind of doing its own thing with like that's not having a season 2 either, right? That was leading into the movie, but also was doing its own thing with kind of like parodying other TV shows. And it was about one really specific thing with Wanda versus Loki, which is more of it's all over the place a little bit in terms, like it's about Loki, but it was also more about, I think, the whole multiverse thing, or like the concept. I felt like they're setting up this concept of all of these different universes, multiverses, timelines, whatever, which seems like it's going to be important going forward with Marvel here, MCU. But yeah, I'm surprised. Like I'll get your opinion or your reasons. I'm sure you're going to be talking quite extensively here, but overall, I think maybe some of your issue is the plot based on a couple of texts you sent me. Like, we haven't talked about it too much, but for me with Marvel in general, you could probably kind of tell this from what I've already been talking about, but I don't find the MCU plot lines to be very interesting across the board. Even the movies I like, the plot is never one of the top reasons. I just don't care that much. I don't know if it's like, I'm sure like people love the comic books, and I'm sure the fans of the comic books think there's good plot lines. There probably is. But I don't know. I don't think that's what MCU is good at translating, in my opinion. I think the strengths are the actors. They get good actors for the most part. They spend a lot of money. They have good special effects, obviously. They have. I think the writing's pretty good overall. Maybe the character writing is better and the dialogue is better than the actual plot line stuff. So that's like more of what I like anyway about the movies and now the TV shows. So like with Loki, that kind of follows through. I thought Hiddleston's really good. I liked Owen Wilson a lot in that role. I thought they were a good counter. His kind of like the Owen Wilson charm, whatever, like laid back casual stuff is like a really good counterpoint, I think, to
Mobius. Character's name is
Mobius. His character, yeah. But his acting style, I mean, is like a good counterpoint to a character like Loki. And then, I wasn't interested in every character, but I do like the concept of all the different Lokis, especially that one episode where there was all the different ones. We'll talk about it probably, but like that stuff is kind of funny to me. Or I like that. That's an interesting concept. Yeah. So I didn't love the show or anything, but I enjoyed it overall, and I'll definitely watch season 2. And it was about, it about met my expectation. Definitely didn't exceed it, but didn't regret watching it or anything. And I am a little surprised. Like, I haven't heard any negative reviews of it. I guess I haven't maybe talked to only a couple of other people that watched it, that I think they liked it overall too. I don't know if what the general consensus is. I think it's high though, right? Like, it was critically, it did well, right? Is that, or am
It
I
did
wrong about that?
really well critically. I think it did
Okay.
the best. I mean, WandaVision might be a little bit higher, but I think it's either neck and neck or right around there with WandaVision,
Okay.
honestly. But speaking of bad reviews, actually, IGN was doing reviews for this series episode per episode, and the original reviewer was giving it some pretty low reviews. And because of, I guess, fan backlash or just heavy fan criticism, they replaced
Interesting.
that reviewer. I don't know if it's because that reviewer was feeling kind of harassed and he stepped down, or if IGN just felt like it was bad publicity and they fired him and replaced him. But
I hope
that
it's
was,
not the latter, because that's obviously not good journalism at all. Um,
well, it's a
but
video game website, so I don't
yeah.
know. It's a video game website first and foremost. You usually don't expect TV show reviews out of it, but it's an MCU series, so why they
IGN though, I mean, I've been on that website before, and I don't look into video games too much, so I'm sure I think they've been doing movie TV stuff for a while.
they do when it's like comic book related or superhero related.
Tangential in some way, genre. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning the writing, and I think for this show, the writing and the plot go hand in hand, which is why I think both are pretty bad, because it's the writing that leads to the plot, which leads to the show, and all of that with the presentation is what fell apart for me. But I will admit, I am a harsh critic, and I will judge these shows, more harsh or harsher than the average viewer. I'll admit that. Okay, you're saying that you didn't love the show, but you enjoyed it. I would
Yeah.
say most people enjoyed it. A lot of people loved it. This show, Loki. I'm in the minority, definitely in the minority, for not having a favorable opinion of it.
So we're gonna replace you halfway through this with someone who hasn't.
Oh,
We're gonna
man.
do the IGN playbook, yeah. So we get good views on this.
All right, if that's what gets us views, then yeah, let's do that.
Farhad Stark coming in. We'll
Yeah,
get to.
that'll be a one up. So you mentioned while I was listening to you, you mentioned that you liked WandaVision. Did I hear you correctly that you liked WandaVision better? But earlier you said if you had to pick one, you would watch Loki out of the three.
No, because what I was saying earlier, I meant like if I had. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying before the fact, not after the fact.
Before
like back like a year ago or whatever. If you told me I can only watch one of the three based on knowing nothing other than just with the character or whatever, I would have picked that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. So this show takes place. I might have to refresh your memory because I'm up to date with most of the MCU timeline. So if anything,
yeah, you definitely will have to. So just go ahead.
So let me know as I'm explaining this to you if anything comes off as confusing. So this show takes place right after the events of the first Avengers movie in 2012. You remember when Loki? They even show it in the beginning of the.
Is it because I do think I remember this though? Like in Endgame, right? Don't they go back to that scene?
Exactly.
And then that's kind of leading off that, right? And then, but Loki, was it in Endgame where Loki disappeared, like they showed at the beginning of the episode 1 here?
Yes.
Okay, I do remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So we have to talk a little bit. A lot of this show has to do with time travel, has to do with multiple universes, aka multiverse, and different timelines. So we kind of have to talk a little bit about Endgame as a preface before we jump deep into Loki's TV show. So I want to do a quick recap with you in terms of the rules of time travel and multiverse that was established in Avengers Endgame. So as you were saying, the reason this show happens is because the Avengers, which in this case are Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Scott Lang, Bruce Banner, go back in time to 2012 to obtain the Tesseract and Loki's scepter. That's how we end up with this show. The reason
are those not the same thing? Tesseract and the scepter, is it?
No, two different things, two different stones.
Okay.
Yeah, Loki's scepter had the Mind Stone, which later powers Vision. Okay. And the Tesseract has the Space Stone. So two different. There was even a scene in Endgame the movie when the Avengers were planning, and Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson's character Natasha, who has her own movie. Side note, she has her own movie, by the
I
way.
haven't watched it yet, but have you?
I've seen it. It's pretty good. So yeah, she says when they're planning the time heist, she says to the Avengers, if we pick the right year, there are 3 Infinity Stones in New York, and those 3 stones are the Space Stone, the Mind Stone, or I'm sorry, the Soul Stone, I think it is, or maybe it is the Mind Stone. Yeah, sorry, the Space.
How many are there? 5?
6
or 6?
Yeah.
6. Okay.
So the Avengers go back to 2012 in the Endgame timeline, or the plot, and the plot of Endgame. In 2003,
Captain America fights himself, right?
Yeah, to get Loki's scepter, which has the Mind Stone.
Mind Stone.
So the 3 stones are the Time Stone, Mind Stone, and Space Stone. The Time Stone Bruce Banner gets from negotiating with the Ancient One. I don't know if you remember that scene, but that scene is also relevant.
Not at all.
that scene will be relevant though in the conversation that we're having. But this is why I wanted to talk to you about the rules of time travel that Endgame established. So there was one scene in Endgame where Rhodey, which is War Machine, is asking Bruce Banner, if we can time travel, why don't we just go way back in time and basically kill baby Thanos?
Right.
I don't know if you do remember that scene. Okay.
I kind of remember that.
Yeah. So the point of that scene was just to have a bit of expositionary dialogue with Professor Hulk explaining to the Avengers why that doesn't work. So
what was the reason? I don't remember what they said the reason was. Yeah.
Their reasoning was just that that's not how time travel works for us. If you travel to the past, that past becomes your future, and you cannot change your future by going to the past. Their method of time traveling basically opens up alternate universes. You create different universes just by going back in time and visiting the past. That's how time travel works, and that's what Professor Hulk was saying to them.
I kind of remember. Yeah. Okay.
So, but the thing is, when they go back to 2012, the words reality and timeline were used interchangeably, and I think it can be argued that the word reality can also be interchanged with universe, right? So people, when watching this show, can get confused about what's a timeline, what's a universe, what's a reality. To me, when the Avengers went back in time to 2012, they created an alternate universe just by going to the past, okay? Because the events of that timeline are going to be different from the sacred timeline, which is what the TVA calls, the main events of the MCU. It changes. The events of the 2012 branch are different, which is why, to me, it's not just an alternate timeline, it's also, therefore, an alternate universe. That's what the Ancient One was explaining to Bruce Banner. She's saying, if you take the Time Stone, if you take any of the Infinity Stones away, it may benefit your reality, but it'll create a dark path for my reality. So so Bruce negotiates with them with her by saying, all right, fine, we'll make a deal. Once we're done, we will come right back here and return the stones to you, which is what Steve Rogers does at the end of Endgame. You remember that scene where he goes back to the past and they see him on a bench and he's an old man?
He's old, yeah.
So the rules of time traveling, it made sense to me. With whatever Endgame established, it made sense to me. The only 2 things that didn't make sense, the first is Scott Lang. Did you see Ant-Man and the Wasp? Like Ant-Man Part 2?
Yes, I did see that one. Yeah.
So you saw at the end of that movie how he's trapped in the quantum realm.
That was like the post-credit scene, right?
Right, because Thanos snapped and his team just got snapped. So his role is essential in Endgame because he introduces time travel to the team, and that's how they kind of get everybody back, right? So if this movie is establishing that you create different timelines, different realities, different universes just by going to the past, how is it that when he luckily was saved and came back into his reality, how is it that it's the same exact reality that he left? I feel like that was kind of convenient, but I didn't think too deep about it because that needed to happen for the story to progress, right? I didn't think too deep about that. The only other thing that didn't really make sense to me was Steve Rogers, who we were just talking about. The screenwriter for Avengers Endgame and the director of Avengers Endgame gave 2 different answers about this, about how he traveled back in time not just to return the stones, but to live a normal life with Peggy Carter, right? So there are 2 different answers that we got. One answer was Steve Rogers went back into the past and he lived in the past, the main timeline. He lived in the main timeline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He just lived as a normal civilian and lived.
I think that's what I thought.
Yeah.
What I assumed was happening. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that makes sense, but that contradicts the rules of time travel that this entire movie set forth, because the movie established that.
Well,
yeah.
Can I just say something about time travel stuff? In general, it never makes complete sense across any media, any book, movie, TV show that deals with time travel. There's never been a complete answer to everything that makes sense. There's always some type of plot hole. Just as a concept, I really don't think it's possible to have no plot holes, nothing, because time travel doesn't make sense. It really, like there's always some. It never. Even in shows you really like or movies, whatever, like there's always some, there's some issue that if you think about it, like it doesn't make sense,
Well, I just want to put out there that Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I mean, Harry Potter is a troubled franchise these days, but just about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the rules of time travel there made sense to me. I don't think there were any plot holes as far as time travel goes in that movie. I don't know if you remember the amount, like time travel.
That does Hermione as some type of device to like take more classes. Is that what it is? Like,
but then for the main plot, there's how Harry and Hermione go back in time to save Sirius Black. There's that whole thing.
Okay. Well, I bet there's some type of plot hole, but yeah, I'm sure someone's come up with something. But maybe you're right. Maybe that one is a foolproof or something.
Maybe not. Maybe there is a plot.
I doubt it. From what I remember,
I didn't feel confused about how things were unfolding there. But that's a conversation for another time. What we were talking about was Steve Rogers, right? And I was explaining to you, and you even said yourself, what you thought happened was Steve Rogers lived in the past.
Yeah, that's what I thought they were saying. Okay.
So the other answer that the people who made the movie, the other answer that they gave was Steve went and created an alternate timeline, just like the rest of the movie established, and he lived in that alternate timeline, and then he returned to the main timeline as an old man. That's the other answer that we got, which completely contradicts the first answer that I gave you. So if that's the case, how did he return somewhere else and then sat on that bench and waited for that specific moment for Sam and Bucky to come talk to him, But
I don't see how that makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
But I'm not thinking too deeply about that, only because I don't like Steve Rogers that much as a character, so I just don't care. Well,
why are you bringing all this up right now? Like it's like what is this leading to?
The reason I'm bringing up the rules of time travel that Endgame established, the reason I'm bringing that up at all is because whatever this universe established for time travel, it made sense. It made enough sense to me that I could enjoy the show without thinking too deep about plot holes about time travel. However, now that we have talked about what this franchise has established for time travel, now we can get into it with Loki, because the TVA and time travel and all that bullshit that this show threw at us really kind of it's in conflict with previous installments of the MCU. That's why we needed to talk about that first, okay? This show kicks off from the direct events of Endgame in the 2012 alternate universe that I was telling you about, right? So Tony Stark and Scott Lang are attempting to take the Tesseract from the Avengers, who had just won the war, the Chitauri invasion in the Battle of New York. But as 2023, Tony Stark picks up the suitcase, the Hulk slams him out of the staircase and says, so many stairs. Then Loki promptly takes the Tesseract and leaves. Loki does Loki, right? He does with Loki.
So from my understanding, based on the first episode, weren't they saying, the TVA was saying like that it was supposed to not happen, where Loki picked that up and then got away?
Yes.
So they're trying to, okay.
But that doesn't make sense to me for several different reasons. Okay, so Loki is accused of being a variant by the TVA. That's why they come to arrest him. But if that's the case, that kind of calls into question several other alternate universes that the Avengers created in Endgame. But before I get into that, I just want to establish that the natural question to ask is, why aren't the Avengers being held accountable? They're the ones who started this whole mess in the first place. And Ravonna Renslayer, during the courtroom scene, when Loki's trying to point out why don't you arrest the Avengers? They're the ones who are time traveling. Loki was able to figure that out. There was this one line where he said, you could smell the cologne of two Tony Starks. I don't know if you remember that line, but he says that. And Ravona's answer to that is, well, the Avengers did what they were supposed to do according to the sacred timeline, which is being dictated by the 3 timekeepers, right? Now, here's my question as a moviegoer, as an audience member, with the TVA's logic. All right, if that's your logic, why isn't Thanos from 2014 accused of being a variant as well? I have to reference Avengers Endgame here again. You remember that in 2014, War Machine and Nebula go to 2014 to obtain the Power Stone. They go to this planet. You remember in 2014 Guardians of the Galaxy where Star-Lord is just dancing to a song, right? You remember that or not?
Yeah. As the beginning of the movie.
Right. And that is the scene where War Machine, Rhodey, and Nebula show up and they knock him out and then take the Power Stone for themselves. Okay. And because of some bionic chip in Nebula's brain, I guess, she's stuck there. And the other Nebula, who is from that year, 2014, has a vision, and Thanos from 2014 sees that vision. And because of that, he decides to deviate from the original events of 2014. If you remember Guardians of the Galaxy, Thanos was in that movie, but his only role in that movie was just sitting on his ass and telling Ronan, the accuser, to go and get the Power Stone for him. Do you remember that or not? Maybe not.
Was that the end credit scene? I remember an end credit scene with... Oh, no, it was during the movie. I don't
It was during the movie, yeah.
Okay. Oh, because he died. The Ronan guy died, obviously.
Ronan died.
Yeah. In that movie. Mm-hmm. Now, well, I feel like this is getting a little convoluted here. Like, does it... I mean, it obviously time travel stuff is, but like, can we just fast forward to the end of like the final episode for a minute? Because doesn't some of the stuff that happened there, like the TVA is not a real thing. It's just like a construct by this guy, right? That's revealed in the final episode.
Well, that's the thing is that like, if that's Kang the Conqueror, in this show, he's called He Who Remains, but that actor is who was cast to play Kang the Conqueror in the next Ant-Man movie. But here's the thing, I get what you're saying here is that like, it seems like the TVA was constructed entirely just to get Sylvie and Loki to that endpoint at the end of time, right? That's what it seems like the TVA is for. But if that's the case, I mean, if you want to talk about the ending of the show for a second, then...
I didn't necessarily think that was the case either. I just think like he was just doing what he wanted. And then like he realized, oh, this would be a good opportunity to, once these two do get together, that I can. So it's kind of like deciding, not that was the plan all along, but it's just kind of what I came to. And it's like, I'll you know what I mean? Like, obviously I look on your face, you don't.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it would only make sense, like all these plot holes that I'm pointing out, all of these would only make sense if you were to say that Kang the Conqueror planned it all along for Sylvie and Loki to show up there at the end of time and
well, I guess that's what I don't understand either. Is he planning? Because he was reading off like a thing that's going to happen, and then at a certain point, he's like, "All right, I don't know anything after this, right?"
Exactly.
So, like, where is that coming from? Like that, that recording of what's going to happen.
Well, the character in the comics is known for time travel. Like that's one of his main things is like time travel and fucking with different universes and stuff. So I would think that this was his plan. I think he was instigating and wanted Sylvie to kill him to start another multiverse war. I think that's what it was.
Or you weren't taking him at a face value that he was fine with either way, like either kill me or just take over and do it yourself. That's what he said, right?
I think he was calling their bluff and wanted Sylvie to kill him. I think. Yeah.
Okay. So, but all I was saying was like, maybe did he know that from the very beginning that those two would get together? Or was it just like he realized that at a certain point and then was like, okay, I guess it doesn't really matter.
I think he knew everything. I think he knew the events of this entire show, and he.
So by that logic, would it make sense that he just being a variant or whatever is only? It's not just messing with time; it's only messing with time in a way that affects his grand plan. So maybe Thanos isn't a variant because he wanted whatever that is to happen.
Well, that's. If we're going back to the points that I was making earlier, we're talking about episode 1. Loki is arrested because he did.
Well, now I'm just talking about everything, the whole show, but yeah.
Okay,
But sorry, go back.
but I mean, it starts from the beginning as we're introduced to the TVA as a concept and as an organization, right? When Loki's at court, Ravonna says, you know, you're accused of going against the sacred timeline because what was supposed to happen, and Loki even sees what was supposed to happen, right? When he's in that chamber, what was supposed to happen was you were supposed to get arrested and you were supposed to go to Asgard and to live out your days for the events of the Dark World to happen, and then Ragnarok, and then Infinity War, where Thanos snaps your neck. But you did something you were not supposed to do, which was take the Tesseract and do whatever. Okay, well, 2014 Thanos was supposed to be sitting on his ass and telling Ronan to get the Power Stone for him, but Endgame Thanos, the variant Thanos, or I'm calling him, he isn't supposed to see a vision of the future and then decide to time travel. That's deviating from the sacred timeline. So why wasn't he, according to the TVA's logic, accused of being a variant? And even Star-Lord, who War Machine knocked out, right? When he wakes up, he's going to be like mad confused. And whatever he does after that point is going to probably going to deviate from the events of Guardians of the Galaxy, which would make him a variant.
Yeah, but I think it's just the rule. The variant is like a made up thing again. Like you're only a variant if you go against whatever the Conqueror guy doesn't think should happen.
We don't know about Kang the Conqueror until the very end of the show, though. So that's the thing. Like I didn't distrust the TVA right in the beginning because Loki is a straight up villain in the beginning of the show, right? He just started a war. The events,
and he hasn't had all the character development from the other movies.
Exactly. So he's just straight up evil at that point. So I'm siding with the TVA. I'd rather trust them than trust Loki at this point. But so I didn't know. Like eventually, the show it's obvious that the TVA is insidious and they can't be trusted, right? But I wasn't buying that right in the beginning. In the beginning, I'm thinking Loki is a criminal and whatever they're saying is probably true. It wasn't until like later, like after episode 3, I guess, like during episode 3, and then after that I realized that the TVA cannot be trusted. Okay.
Well, I mean, just in terms of fiction, whatever storytelling, I can't really see any situation where some setup like this, that organization isn't going to end up being insidious in some way. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that they're just going to be like the right thing the whole time, you know? Like, why would you tell that story?
Well, the whole organization, maybe, because Mobius didn't seem like a bad guy, right? Mobius seemed like he just wanted to do his job, and later he finds out that he himself is a variant and everybody's a variant.
Everyone is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of true, I guess.
So it's like as part of your criticism that because like we see in the whole show, so whatever happened, whatever your thoughts after episode 1 doesn't really matter. Like you got to take the whole show to see everything that happened. But as part of your criticism that you didn't like the way that was handled, like they were trying to trick you at the beginning, or like you just didn't think it was revealed well, or was it like too much at the end, like too much of all a different thing all at once? They didn't set it up enough, or
what the easiest way I can break it down for you is that like the audience member, because this is the 25th or 26th installment of the MCU, so it takes place or it comes after Avengers Endgame, right after that movie came out, that there should have been like a character in the show who was aware of some of the things that the audience is aware of, which is, wait a minute, Thanos did something different from the secret timeline. There's a whole 1970 branch timeline. Like if Loki wasn't supposed to take the Tesseract, then that means Tony Stark and Steve Rogers were not supposed to go to 1970, right? And create whatever other variants were supposed to be there. There should have been another character on the show that was aware of the things that the audience is aware of, so that they could come up with some explanation, some expositionary dialogue as to why you cannot trust the TVA. Like, yeah, Loki is accused of being a variant. These characters aren't, so there must be something wrong with the TVA. I had to figure that out on my own just from watching it, but it's not good storytelling. If you have to...
I disagree with that. Like, I actually have the complete opposite opinion of what you just said. I think that would have been bad if they had something like that. I wouldn't have liked it. And like how I said about how this did seem more like it's a TV show, I prefer that it doesn't, and that's because of the way I care about Marvel or watch these things. Like, I think it's better to have it stand on its own to some degree like that and not have this other stuff. Like, if you didn't have to remember everything, or you could have just not watched all the Marvel stuff and still enjoyed the show. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't like putting too much stuff in from the whole universe as a whole would be negative in my opinion. Like, I would have liked it less, I think. Like, I don't, you know what I like. I think you could probably watch it. You might be confused about some things, but you could probably watch the show having not watched any other Marvel stuff and get what's going on.
No, I totally disagree with that. This show is not going to make any sense to you unless you at least watch the first Avengers movie and Avengers Endgame. Otherwise, it's going to be like, where is any of this coming from? None of it is.
Well, what do you mean? It's like think about it like this: like, take all Marvel stuff out of it, and you're just watching a new thing for the first time. There's a character named Loki. All right, he's like, you know, Thor and Loki and all this stuff is based on mythology anyway, right? Marvel didn't come up with it, you know. So let's say you have like a very basic knowledge of like that Thor and Odin and all this stuff. So like a guy named Loki wakes up or gets arrested and moved to like this TVA thing. Like you could base a story on that and not have any prior knowledge of anything. It doesn't matter. You get a little background that he's been a villain or he's done bad things. Now he's in this place, and they're telling him what he has to do, or he's like getting accused of crimes in this separate place. And then it all unfolds like, all right, there's this Mobius guy. What's going on here? Oh, there's other versions of me. Okay, like you don't need all that background Marvel stuff to have a show like that. In my opinion, it would work still pretty fine. So I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It worked the way it worked, however the show presented itself. But I'm pretty sure that most of the audience watching it has seen most of the previous installments of this franchise. And if you
probably, but I'm just still trying to evaluate the show as its own thing.
As its own thing, or even going by what you said, I guarantee you people who decided to watch Loki and never saw anything Marvel Cinematic Universe related in the past will have had questions after every single episode with whatever the characters are talking about, with whatever they're referencing. Yeah, I'm sure that there wouldn't be able to follow along.
But also that's part of it. Like, I'm not saying they did an amazing job with that, but that's part of like how TV shows work as well. Like there are supposed to be questions. Like you're not supposed to like watch one episode and be like, I know everything that's happening. You know, there's supposed to be mysteries and questions about how everything's going to unfold. You know.
Yeah, but I don't mean like with anything going on in the plot. I mean with the plot referencing past events, because this show often referenced past events. So if there's an audience member watching this who has never seen anything in the past of this franchise, they'll be asking more than just things newly introduced within this show. That's what I'm saying. So that's really just why. Yeah, I get that this show has to be a standalone installment. Like as you said in the beginning, there's going to be a season 2 as well. So I get that Loki, this TV show, has to be standalone as well. But it's also at the same time not a standalone. It's part of a much bigger franchise. Right. You know what I mean? It has to fit in both ways. There are previous installments of this franchise that do a good job of being a standalone installment of its own franchise, like, you know, an Iron Man movie or a Thor movie or an Avengers movie, which also does a good job of having its place in the timeline of this franchise as well. But this show doesn't do a good job of either, in my opinion. I'm just saying we don't have to agree with that. We don't have to agree on this specific point. I'm just saying that in either case, whether it's something to watch as a standalone or something to watch as a next installment, it wasn't good in either respect to me, just to me though. But
okay,
yeah, again, I get that, you know, I'm talking about more things that some people who are listening to my criticisms will be saying shit like, it's just a fucking TV show, bro. Don't think about it too much. Don't think too deep about it. Just watch it and enjoy it. True, and truth be told as well, the target audience for this is probably like kids, you know, like little kids and teenagers and stuff. They're the main.
I don't think it's little kids as the target audience for this.
Well, they're little action figure Lokis, I'm sure, that are made for the merchandising, right? So I get it. I get that I shouldn't be thinking too deep about every little thing. Fine, that's fair. However, I will argue at the same time though that these TV shows are aiming for like deeper storytelling. They're aiming for like thought-provoking storytelling. Falcon and the Winter Soldier did that, definitely. Wanda Vision did that as well. And if they're aiming for more than just being a blockbuster TV show or movie, if they're aiming for something more than just that, then they're susceptible for criticism, which is why I'm so critical of it. That's just
I agree with all that. I just think even with the criticism alone, like you're saying, it has to be separated because you're saying like I think the criticism itself has to be separated into two parts of like as the show by itself and as how it ties in with all the Marvel stuff, you know. So like if all your criticism is about the latter, then it's not fair. But I don't think it is. But I'm just saying like it has to be. You have to take both those things into it.
Well, I mean, let me put it to you this way. This is the third show that you and I are reviewing, right? The criticisms that I had with Wanda Vision or with Falcon and Winter Soldier, no, I don't think either one I criticized for, having an awkward placement of being a standalone story as well as being an installment of a bigger franchise. Whatever problems I had with those shows wasn't about presentation. Loki, though, I have that problem with it. I'm just saying, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's partially about like I keep tying it back to like it felt more to me like an actual TV show, where like Falcon Winter Soldier was like one long movie. So I think that's part of this. Like, it's not going to have the same feel. It's not going to be the same. Like, I don't. I could see a Falcon Winter Soldier movie, like if they just released the second season as just a movie, a 2-hour movie, 2.5-hour movie, I'd be like, fine, that makes sense to me. Whereas like Loki, if they did, I think can work continue. And even I would say for my criticism, I think they could even went more in that direction of like making it more like a show, like, because at the start of it, after like the first 2 episodes, I was like, oh, is this going to be like he goes, each episode is him like going back in time or doing something like actually helping the TVA if it's a real thing. Like you could just have a serialized show about Loki just doing that for 10 episodes or something, like a different thing of the week type of thing. So
after I saw the first episode, I was reading some theories online, which I was on board with it at first. You remember that scene where he's in the chamber and he sees how his life was supposed to end? Fun fact, actually, like when he was watching that reel, the last thing that we see is not Thanos snapping his neck, but Thor hugging him. So that's technically the last thing that Loki ever felt was Thor hugging him right before.
Right, because you want to feel your neck getting snapped. Just that,
right. Yeah, I'm just saying that was like a nice little touch, I guess, that they put there, and I thought that was cool. But yeah, so we Loki the character sees like how his whole story ends, and when they announced that there's going to be a TV show based on Loki from what he did in the movie Endgame, I thought that sounded pretty cool. Like they're just going to have a whole nother story about an alternate universe. But lo and behold, the whole show is basically about the consequences of trying to create an alternate universe, basically. Just like how Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I mean, tangentially, just like how in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I was curious, will Sam Wilson, the Falcon, will he ever receive the Super Soldier to be the next Captain America? But lo and behold, that whole show was about the Super Soldier serum, right? So I get what you're saying, that it would have been cool if the premise of the show was a little bit different, but the premise of this show was, and I was talking to you about it off the record, I guess, that like the moral of the show or the moral of the story is, don't let anybody tell you about your destiny, predestination. You get to have free will for your own. You get to decide which you're.
That's definitely a part of it. Yeah. Like even with Falcon and like you're saying, all these shows, there's not just one theme, there's a bunch of things together.
So what I thought the show was going to be about was with Loki seeing how his mother died, right? Because he saw in Thor: The Dark World, Loki blames Thor for the death of his mother, which it was actually his fault. They never brought it up in The Dark World, which annoyed me about that movie. But Mobius says, "Oh, you tell the Dark Elves to go this way, but actually they go this way and they kill your mother." So I feel like in the beginning, anyway, I thought maybe the show was going to be about Loki trying to save Frigga. That's not what it ended up being about, but that would have been a cool approach to take, I guess.
I don't wait. Before you said it's about the danger of trying to change, or what did you say? It's about trying to change.
Danger of trying to create different universes. Yeah, that's what the TVA is about, right? It's just stop, branch timelines to maintain the sacred timeline. That's
like Loki wasn't trying to create different universes in the first place, was he? Like,
well, he didn't know. That's the thing. When he took the Tesseract, he didn't know at that time, I guess, that the Avengers time traveled and they were trying to take the Tesseract. He was just doing what he would do. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's more about understanding yourself. Like that seemed to be the main themes of the show to me. And then with the Sylvie character, like how people react to different upbringings or different events that affect their life. Like I think that's the main kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely didn't have as firm of a theme as the other two shows. Which like Wanda Vision is about a study of grief, and then Falcon was about, you know, your place fighting for a country that's like been bad to your people, and it was about a lot of things, but that was part of it. And then like the villains in that were like about like a terrorist group, but like how they're reacting to different. So like this Loki definitely didn't have his like solid of a theme that you can like, oh, that's what it is, you know. I don't. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends. I mean, but that could be. It could be seen as a criticism, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that is another criticism as for me. That's another reason why I think the show fucking sucked. But
oh, now you're going real hard on.
All right, so you're mentioning Sylvie. You know, we're probably going to end up talking about her a lot because she is probably the second most important character after Loki, like our protagonist Loki, right? She's probably the second most important character, or just as important as him. I don't know, because the show is called Loki, and she's technically also Loki, right? So we find out that she's arrested by the TVA when she was just a little girl. And I want to talk to you about her. You know what I mean when I say Nexus Event, right?
Is that, well, they were bringing that up in the show a lot.
Yeah.
Is that when she was taken, or?
Right. But like, do you understand what the concept of Nexus Event is in the show? Right?
It's like when, like when worlds get destroyed and stuff, like he was hiding in, or hiding in.
No, those are just apocalypses. Nexus events are
hiding in apocalypse.
What a Nexus event is, and this was actually brought up first in Wanda Vision. You probably don't remember. It was really, really short. But a Nexus event is basically an event in a timeline that if it continues going in a certain direction, it'll create a branch and you cannot prune it. You can't go back from it. That's what
I see.
Yeah.
So was that starting to happen in the one episode where they're like almost gonna kiss or whatever? Like,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So and the weird thing is that's in an apocalypse. What they were testing. You remember that one scene where Loki and Mobius go back in time in Italy, I think it was, and he ran up to them.
Yeah, it was Pompeii.
Pompeii. There we go. And there was no Nexus event there because generally apocalypses you cannot prevent them. They just it'll happen.
Right. Oh, I see. Right. Yeah, that's what's happening. Okay.
And that planet that they were on, it was an apocalypse, so it wasn't supposed to change. But the effect that Sylvie and Loki were having on each other were so profound that it was about to be the Nexus event. Yeah. So yeah, we see Sylvie. We see a flashback of Sylvie being arrested by the TVA when she was a little girl. I want to talk to you about the TVA for a second. And this is more nitpicking on my part, but because this really bothers me, I just have to bring it up. It's revealed that all of the Minutemen, or just the employees of the TVA, they're all just variants who used to be human.
Just regular people.
I guess they used to be from planet Earth. So it's also revealed that at the headquarters of the TVA, magic is deactivated. Superpowers are all deactivated. My question to you is, does that also include superhuman strength? Because if you remember the first Avengers movie, Loki's fighting Captain America, who has a level of superhuman strength, and Loki effortlessly kicks his ass. So he's significantly stronger. Not only is he an Asgardian, he's a frost giant, right? But when he's arrested by the TVA, he doesn't have that level of strength. So does that mean that along with magic,
I think so. Like, because didn't you see like the stones and they had no effect either? Like,
yeah.
I think it's like in a just a world, or like a what do you call it? Like but when you don't go to heaven, but you're in like a
purgatory or limbo.
Purgatory. It's like a limbo purgatory thing.
Yeah.
Where there's no power that works.
So that makes sense. Although the only thing that's kind of iffy for me is that like superhuman strength, that's natural because Loki's not human. He's a frost giant. So naturally he's supposed to be way, way stronger than the average human. But is it that being at the TVA also strips him of that superhuman strength? Because that's the only way it's going to make sense to me.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think everyone just has normal human strength, whether you're human or not. That's what.
Later in episode 3, which I thought was a pretty filler-ass episode, he's fighting humanoid aliens, like aliens that look human. So unless they're also super strong, Loki should have been able to take them out easily as well. But I don't know. That's just more nitpicking on
That's
my
nitpick, I think. Yeah, I don't know. Well, it brings up a point though. Like they all do seem to be from Earth, and obviously there's like, it's a whole universe in Marvel. But the guy is the Conqueror guy. What do they call him on the show? He
He Who
whatever.
Remains.
He Who Remains. He is a human, right?
Yes, Richards. I think his name is Nathan Richards. Another version of him is actually, or a descendant of his is Mr. Fantastic. You know the Fantastic Four. I'm sure you've heard of that superhero team. The leader of the guy who could stretch his arms. I'm sorry.
Mr. Fantastic. I know.
Yeah, he's a descendant, or one of the two is descendant from one another. So yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
He's human though. He doesn't have any super strength or anything. He's a regular human. His only strength is like knowing what's going to happen, so he can do dodge a punch.
He's a genius. He's one of the geniuses of the universe. So I guess he has that going for him. But I don't know if he has like superhuman strength. I don't know about that.
He does. I mean, they implied that he doesn't. It seemed like so. Like, is it just like is everyone in the limbo of the TVA just have his ability, kind of like his level of strength or whatever?
Possibly, or their suits have strength. I don't know, man. Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna be able to understand all this, and maybe part of it we're not supposed to yet because there is season 2 or whatever. But
okay, that's fine. Yeah, I didn't need all of those questions. I mean, they're not gonna answer any more questions about the TVA. There is one burning question I have at the end of this that I want to ask you, but as far as the rest of the TVA goes, there's Miss Minutes, who explains the concept of the TVA.
Yeah, I liked her. That was one of my favorite parts.
Tara Strong, yeah. Expositionary dialogue there. And then she was also explaining, why you shouldn't become a variant, why you shouldn't deviate from the sacred timeline. We later learned that the timekeepers, that's all a bunch of bullshit created by Kang the Conqueror. He actually voiced them, which was also interesting. It's just another hint that they're not anything real. But here's what I don't understand about variants, Sylvie included. When Loki's arrested, we see other random people arrested for being a variant, right? So how does one have the opportunity to deviate from the sacred timeline? Loki had the opportunity in 2012 to deviate because the Avengers time traveled and they changed the events, right? And that's how he had the opportunity to deviate. But how does anyone else have the opportunity to deviate from what they're supposed to do? How did Sylvie, like we see Sylvie playing with like little action figures, I think.
Toys or something, yeah.
The implication is that she's becoming a hero. She's becoming heroic instead of becoming villainous, right? I think Mobius.
Oh, interesting. I didn't pick up on that at all.
I think during a lunch scene or whatever, at some point, I think Mobius is explaining to our protagonist Loki that your role in every single universe is to make other people better. You're not meant to be heroic. You're meant to be a failure, and you're meant to make.
Yeah, I do remember that part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, what did Sylvie do? Like, she was just being herself, right? She was being heroic.
Well. Fard, I mean, if what you're saying before that you think happens is that the Kang Conqueror wanted the thing with Loki and Sylvie to be together, then that was what he's leading to. Then he purposely took her off the timeline so she would become that person, right? Because like she's so bitter and everything about all this stuff. So if he wanted her to kill him, that's what he wants, then that would make sense to take her off.
Well, that's another thing, bro. Is that
I think he's just picking what he wants. He's like, the TVA is not real. Again, it's just a construct by him. So like he's just picking and choosing, I think, what he considers a deviation or not.
That's part of what I was trying to tell you before about the TVA and the plot holes of the show is that everything about the TVA only makes sense if you just attribute everything happening to, He Who Remains, Kang the Conqueror, wanting it to happen. But if that's the case, why are there other random people who have nothing to do with Loki? Why were they arrested for going against the sacred timeline if all Kang cares about is Loki and Sylvie?
Well, maybe they affected in some way or the other. Like it's so complicated, like the whole structure of time. And if you go back and one random thing changes, like maybe that's all. And he knows everything that's going to happen. So maybe so like there was that one guy at the first episode. That was a funny scene, right, where Loki's seeing what's going on, and they just pruned him. So like, who knows? Maybe that guy whatever that guy did was like would have messed up the grand scheme of things some way or the other. I don't know.
Okay, that makes sense. The only thing that I still have a question of is we don't see how people who become variants, we don't see how they have the opportunity to have these Nexus events. We only see that with Loki, with our protagonist Loki, and he had the opportunity because of other time travelers. With Sylvie, if what she was supposed to do as a little girl was not be heroic, then does that mean there's another alternate Sylvie timeline where she's not being heroic? So if that's the case, what prompted this version of her? Then what prompted her to become heroic? What intervened for her to do that? Because the thing about the protagonist Loki is there was some intervention in his life that got him to become a variant. That's all I'm trying to say. And all of this can be just swiped away by saying Kang the Conqueror wanted it to happen. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't make it for good storytelling. I'm just saying I'm making up for plot holes created just by saying.
I don't think that makes for good storytelling, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily an issue if that's something that's. Yeah, it might have been interesting if that was explained, but I don't know. It's that. Yeah, I mean the Sylvie character in general is kind of like I don't know how to feel exactly about her. Like,
she's, I mean, like I was saying earlier, she's probably the second or the most important character along with our protagonist Loki, right? But we get a good amount of exposition with her in episode 3. That's the episode where the show was starting to go downhill for me. Understanding the show was just fine if I wasn't engaging and talking about it with other people, because that's when it's starting to get confusing for me. But whatever happened in episode 3, I felt like it didn't have to be, the whole episode didn't have to take place with them trying to leave and then failing to leave. You know, that didn't have to be the entire episode. That's why it kind of felt like filler to me.
Well, I think it was a character-based episode. Like the main point of that was not to push the plot forward, but to progress the characters.
Yeah, but you could have had both. You didn't have to focus just on the characters. But anyway, like she's a variation. I don't know if we should call her a variant, but there are different variations of Loki. Like we do see later on.
She's just just call him A Loki. She's A Loki.
I think as a side note, I think she's an amalgamation of Sylvie the Enchantress and Lady Loki from the comics. I think they just mixed those two characters together. And
the writers just did that.
Yeah.
Not like this on the show. They're supposed to be like that.
I think on the show and in this universe, she's just a mixture of those two characters from the comics. I think, but I can't confirm that. But anyway, along with her, once Loki, the protagonist, is pruned, we see that he's in the void, and that's so pruning doesn't kill you; it just teleports you to somewhere else. And there we see Alligator Loki, Classic Loki, Young Loki, and then later President Loki, and also Boastful Loki. Right? So Lokis who all kind of look different from each other, and then another Loki that does look like our Loki, which is President Loki, right? So there are all these different versions of these characters who all had their Nexus events and were all brought here and were surviving. That's the thing. People are brought to the void to just be killed off, but these Lokis are survivors. Our Loki even asks that to Classic Loki, who's the old one. He's like, if people are brought here to die, how is it that you guys all survived? And he's like, we're Lokis. Lokis survive. Even though by the end of that episode, he sacrifices himself so that our two Lokis are able to go to the castle and meet He Who Remains, right? Like I guess that's what happens there. But the ending of the show was good. Okay, I hated after episode 2. I started hating the show, but I liked the finale. Okay, I would go so far as to say the final episode of this show was the best finale out of all of these shows. It was a way better finale than WandaVision's finale, which I thought was the worst.
That was the weakest episode of the series. Yeah, and
it also ended better than Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like that show was disappointing, sure, but also like the finale was disappointing. This finale, though, I think it really, really delivered. So I just want to talk a little bit about WandaVision again. A lot of people were theorizing about a character named Mephisto who was behind all of the acts going on there. I didn't subscribe that much to those rumors. Like I did subscribe to the Quicksilver rumors because that was tangible. Like the character was there, so like I was subscribing to that, but I didn't pay that much attention and didn't care that much that Mephisto did not show up at the end of WandaVision. However, people were theorizing the same way. Is Kang the Conqueror in this show? And there was some tangible, I guess, things in this show that did foreshadow him showing up. And there he was. He was there at the end of the show. And I liked that they did that. I like that they delivered, showing this villain who's probably going to be the main villain of the entire Phase 4. Because I don't know if I mentioned this on the record, but that actor will show up again as Kang the Conqueror.
You said that during this podcast.
I did. Okay. In Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I think that's the name of the movie. Here's the thing, though, Podrew. He never refers to himself. Nobody refers to him as Kang the Conqueror in this finale. He even said, he's.
I didn't know that until you brought it up today.
Right. So that's my bad. What he did say, though, is that he's met many different versions of himself. He discovered the multiverse, and he saw many different versions.
He said, like, he's the nicest one or whatever.
Yeah. He said,
and it's implied at the end of this finale that one of the other ones came and took over, right?
Well, I think that's what this franchise is going to lead up to. Yeah, but he mentions how he's been called many different things in different timelines. One of them being Conqueror, and that's one of the versions of him is Kang the Conqueror, which we will see in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. What I'm just basically suggesting is that this character, or all the different versions of this character, is probably going to be the next super villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like,
seems like it, yeah.
I think that's what.
But it sounds to me like a reason you thought the finale was good is like the reasons you're citing is that it tied in more of the general storyline stuff, the general MCU stuff.
Not just the general MCU stuff, but also it tied up a lot of the annoying plot holes that this whole show set up. Like, I don't.
But are they plot holes if it's explained then what the reason is of that?
Well, not
saying it was, but are they? You know,
they never really, like, early on in this podcast, I was complaining to you about how the TVA never arrested 2014 Thanos for deviating from the sacred timeline. They never did anything about the 1970 timeline that Tony and Steve created by traveling there. They weren't supposed to travel there, right? Because they were supposed to get the Tesseract from 2012. So they must have created variants just by going back to 1970. I'm just saying. So none of that is explained. There was never an actual concrete explanation to that. That's why I was saying it would have been good to have a character who knows the things that the audience knows. It's all just, it's easy to just wipe it all away with a brush by saying it's what Kang the Conqueror planned, right? That's the only way these plot holes make sense, is if Kang the Conqueror only cared about all of these things happening.
That's why I'm going with that, I guess. That's why I'm going with that theory.
It doesn't make for good storytelling, but it's good enough that, like, I like the finale of the show, okay?
Yeah. I liked that. I probably thought that the fifth episode was the best. It was my favorite, like where they had where they were in there with all the different Lokis.
Yeah, that was
the most entertaining part to me, at least.
I did like that episode. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I did enjoy it. Yeah, I like that episode.
Cause, like, to me, even though I get it, and the actor did a good job, I think, the Kang Conqueror actor, and it was a good wrap up, and I like the cliffhanger at the end. It is a little bit out of, like, I wasn't expecting going into this finale, like, oh, there's just going to be this new character introduced. It's going to be 2/3 of the episode is him talking, basically, like, and, like, explaining all this stuff. Like, that could be a criticism, I think, for me, that it's, like, that was a little bit out of nowhere almost, or, like...
Oh, just a new character showing up right at the end, or what?
Well, that's, like, the one in charge of everything all of a sudden, you know.
John, by the way, yeah, I just want to put out there, the actor's name is Jonathan Majors, and
he looked familiar. What else is he in?
I don't think this might have been the first thing I've ever seen him in, but he's a good actor, you know. So yeah, he was in I'm looking down on Wikipedia. As far as movie goes, he was in The Five Bloods, Jungle Land, Gully, Captive State, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Out of Blue.
I haven't seen any of those.
Yeah,
I probably just saw him, but maybe just, I don't know. He looked familiar to me, but
he looked familiar, yeah. But I don't think I've seen him in anything else.
And then Sylvia, or Sylvie rather, I didn't recognize her or anything either. She was okay. Like, she wasn't like the best actor. She was fine. I guess, like, I won't even say she wasn't. Her acting is fine. Maybe with the character, I kind of, like, I get what they're doing with it. Like, she's different as a Loki because of what happened to her, and then her whole life became about revenge, essentially. But, like, I did think, like, thinking of the concept of, like, a lady Loki in my head, you know, I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of a missed opportunity to have, like, to not have another, like, Loki type character of like the one we know, that just like a female version, like I think their interactions could have been funny in that way. Obviously that's not at all what they're going for, and then they're almost going for like they're attracted to each other, which is funny in its own sense because
They
like
didn't just go for it.
it's in person, but
they didn't
yeah.
just go for them being attracted to each other. They kissed in the
Yeah, they may. It was a major plot point, but for me, I was like, oh, and that's why I think I like the episode with all the different versions of Loki too, because like that whole concept is like what's more interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah, multiverse. Yeah, which we will talk about that like toward the end of this as well. So as far as Sylvie's actress goes, I liked her. I think she did a good enough job. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and I found the character entertaining. I was fine with her. I thought she was cool and pretty. Yeah. Ravonna Renslayer as well. Yeah, the acting in the show was fine. Like
she's Ravonna. She's like the main kind of becomes the main antagonist of the show.
She was the judge. Yeah. So
judge.
At the
I like her scene in the finale too with Mobius, like when she's like, you actually betrayed me or whatever. It's like I could kind of, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like I take Mobius' side overall, but I was like, I could kind of see what she's saying there. Like it depends how you look at it. If she's taking like the super high view of things or whatever, and his whole thing is all about free will is the most important thing. Like I thought that was actually kind of interesting.
So you might not know this, so I'm just gonna put this out there. In the comics, Ravonna Renslayer, she's lovers with Kang the Conqueror. So I thought when she opened the door, when she finished that conversation with Mobius and she walked through the portal, I thought she was gonna show up right there next to He Who Remains, talking to Sylvie and Loki right then and there. We don't know where she goes. I guess this is gonna be picked up in a future.
So maybe they will become lovers subsequently in the show or something, but they're not at this point. Like they're not going with that plot line because she didn't really know what was going on. It didn't seem like.
Doesn't Mobius ask her where she's going, and she says, "I'm going to the one person who does have free will," and I assumed she was talking about him. I thought she was planning it with him.
Did she say person though? Did she say one person? I don't think that's what she said.
I don't remember exactly. I thought she said something along the lines of, "I'm going to who has free will," or "I'm going to someone who has or owns free will," something along those lines. Man.
Yeah, it would certainly make sense if she was doing that. But also, it didn't seem like she knew about him before. She thought that the things that were just androids were real. The timekeepers or whatever were real up to that point. So I don't think she could have had a pre-existing relationship with.
Yeah, that's a good point. She did think that the timekeepers were real too. So unless she was bluffing, because when Sylvie was holding the the pruner up to her, she's like, "Look, I just want to know as much as you do now." So
I guess she could be bluffing. She could be, yeah, that could be true. We don't know for sure. But also now I'm thinking about this. Because like there was a scene where like Miss Minutes came in and was like, she was like, "That's not what I asked for," and she was like, "Oh no, but he thinks this will be more helpful." So what was that showing her? I wonder. What's going to be helpful?
What Miss Minutes was showing who? To Sylvie or to Ravonna?
No, to what's her name? Ravonna?
Yeah, Ravonna Renslayer.
I recognize her from, she's in a Black Mirror episode. That's why I know this actress.
Oh, okay. But I actually just saw
my favorite episode, but
okay, yeah. No, I haven't seen all the Black Mirror episodes. I mean, I might ask you what episode that is after this, but I just saw her in.
It's called Oh, and what?
Jupiter Ascending, which is not.
Oh yeah, I heard that was not very good.
But she's in that too. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that Black Mirror episode's called San Junipero. But it's so she wanted Miss Minutes to like find a file for her, right? And then Miss Minutes came back and she was like, Ravonna was like, "Well, this is what I asked you to get," and Miss Minutes was like, "No, but he thinks it'll be more useful to you."
Okay.
So what I'm wondering, it's not, we don't know the answers, but because we don't see what happens really after that, but I'm wondering what that was like. It must have something to do with wherever she was going through that portal or whatever,
So we're definitely going to see Ravonna again. Do you think Miss Minutes is going to come back, or do you think this is it for her?
I don't know. I hope so, because I like that. It's just a funny cartoon character talking, but I think, she seems to work directly for Kang, if that's his name. But, sorry, that train in the background there. Yeah, so I would assume probably. Yeah. I think so, because also like it's like basically a reset at the end of the episode Loki comes in, and
Okay.
and then Mobius thinks he's an analyst, doesn't know he is. It's like a different timeline or whatever. So
That's okay. So two things that I want to ask you real quick before we go into like, talking about the future. Two things. The first is, since you just brought that up, was that an alternate TVA that Sylvie threw Loki into, or did the memories of everybody working for that TVA,
I don't think we know. I mean, I guess we could try to pick up some clues somewhere or other of rewatching the scene, maybe. But.
Well, the one clue that we have is that the last thing we see is Loki staring at a statue. Where that statue was the three timekeepers, and that's replaced with a statue of He Who Remains.
Kang or whatever, yeah.
That's the one clue we have, but I don't know if that straight up tells us that it's an alternate TVA, or if it's
because you could have just put that statue on,
right?
Yeah, it could, and then wiped everyone's memories, like Mobius and whatever. Yeah,
I'm gonna go with that, like everybody's memories being changed, and the reason I want to go with that is because this show has established that all of the TVA employees are people who used to be human variants, right? Who just got pruned from their timelines and started working for the TVA. So if this is an alternate TVA, that means that these are all people who are all pruned from a different timeline, tangential to the same timeline as the other TVA, which just makes it more confusing. I get that it's Multiverse of Madness, that's the name of the next Doctor Strange movie, but that's just even more convoluted than it needs to be, in my opinion. So I want to just go with the same TVA with everybody's memories.
Yeah, I hope that's the case as well. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. But by the way, what is the we're talking about? You're bringing up all the movies and stuff coming. It's like Phase 4 that MCU's in right now. Is that right?
This is Phase 4.
What is the next movie that's coming out?
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Okay, Shang-Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Is that gonna have anything to do with time travel or any of this stuff? Multiverse
I don't think so. I mean, technically, the first Phase 4 movie was Black Widow, and the only I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's not much that movie.
I am planning to watch it at some point, probably.
So I think the main theme of Phase 4, or maybe the next saga, because Phases 1, 2, and 3. What's up?
Well, the Black Widow's got to be a prequel, right? Because Black Widow's dead. She died, right?
The post-credit scene is not a prequel. The post-credit scene is present.
Okay, but the movie in general, the story is like a prequel, right?
Yes. But some of the things that happened during that prequel could still, be relevant for future events. I don't want to spoil it for you if you do plan on watching that movie. But I'm just saying Phases 1, 2, and 3 of the MCU collectively are referred to as the Infinity Saga. Because out of all those movies, Thanos was the main villain out of that whole saga, right? All those phases. So I'm curious if Kang the Conqueror will be the main villain of just Phase 4 or the next entire saga of the MCU, like the next 10 years. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, with what we're knowing, what we're seeming to figure out, I would think he probably will be the main villain.
Possibly, yeah.
Because if he's that powerful, I mean, who else could be above that?
Well, I mean, Thanos can always come back, but I think if they do go with
is Thanos gonna come back as like a hero this time and take down? Is they're gonna do something like that?
Yeah, I don't think so. If he comes back at all, he'll just be like another villain working with the other villains. I don't know, but like if they do, if the next saga is about the multiverse, then I think they'll just call it the Multiverse Saga, or it could just be Phase 4.
So what's the next movie the Shang-Chi movie, whatever? Yeah. We don't know what's gonna happen with that, but like, to your knowledge, what's the next movie in the timeline here that's gonna have something to do with this stuff?
Spider-Man No Way Home. Okay, so
when does that come out? Next year?
December, but it could be pushed back.
December of 2021. Okay.
This year, yeah. So the question you first asked me was, what is the next movie that's coming out, and that's Shang-Chi. So I think Shang-Chi does look like it's gonna be a pretty cool movie, but I don't think that it's gonna have that much to do with the multiverse.
When does that come out?
September.
Okay.
And it might have something to do with the multiverse, it might not, but that's okay. I don't think even if the multiverse is the main theme of this phase, I don't think every single installment has to have something to do with the multiverse, because Falcon didn't really have much to do with it. Wanda Vision implies some of it, but really didn't have that much to do with the multiverse. I will say though, you remember the very ending of Wanda Vision where she hears her son calling for her? Some people have theorized that is chronologically takes place the exact same time as Sylvie stabbing He Who Remains and unleashing the multiverse of madness, and like
that would make sense. Yeah.
So I don't know if you are subscribed to New Rockstars, the YouTube channel, but they actually reviewed not only did they review every single episode of WandaVision and Loki, but they also go into some of these series. Some of these things that I've complained to you about, they try to explain some of it. So it's a good channel. If you're into this stuff, I would recommend it to you and to anybody like listening to this podcast as well, because I'm subscribed to them. So yeah.
All right.
This
free
is
advertising for this channel.
Oh man. So you were asking me like what's the next movie or installment that I think we'll have to do with
Well, you just Spider-Man, right? The new
Spider-Man No Way Home. Yeah. So tons of rumors about Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield returning. What is confirmed is did you see the previous Spider-Man movies? Because Dr. Octopus.
No.
Right? Okay.
Oh no, I've seen that one. I haven't seen. I've seen all the Tobey Maguire ones.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Octopus is the villain of Spider-Man 2.
I know he's going to be back in this one too. Right?
Confirmed. In my opinion, he was the best villain of that series. He's one of the best.
Yeah, for sure.
Comic book villains.
Alfred Molina. Yeah.
Yeah, Alfred Molina. And
but he died obviously in that movie, so it would have to be a different version of him coming in this one or whatever. They
leave it kind of open-ended. We never see his body again, so they leave it open-ended enough where the explanation that the actor gives is that he is taken away from his universe moments before his death.
But also that is a separate franchise anyway, right? It's not the MCU, so it's like
multiverse.
Are they saying those are still? Because so does multiverse.
Here's how I can explain it to you, okay? And this gets into Hollywood politics a little bit. In 2019, the original deal that Sony and Disney signed to have Spider-Man in the MCU, it ended, and they were going to go their separate ways. Mm-hmm. Some people have theorized that Sony was going to go the multiverse route anyway. They were going to go with the Spider-Verse. You saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, right?
I did see that one, yeah.
My opinion, best Spider-Man movie ever.
What was that, a Sony movie?
Yeah, it was a Sony movie only. Yeah. Not MCU related at all.
Right, I knew it was an MCU, but okay.
Yeah. Right. So I think in my opinion, that's the best Spider-Man movie ever. And I think its success made Sony feel like they could do a live action multiverse story. And I think whether or not Disney was going to be involved, Spider-Man 3, the new Spider-Man 3 was going to have multiverse elements. They could do the whole thing without Disney's involvement. They would just replace Doctor Strange with Madam Web. I don't know if you know that character, but
no, I don't. Right. Madam Web.
She's kind of like a psychic mentor character.
So she has a spider name type thing in her name too.
Yeah. So they were apparently, hypothetically, Sony was going to still do the same Spider-Man No Way Home with involving the multiverse with previous Spider-Man characters and just not involve the MCU in it. But thankfully, Sony and Disney came back to the drawing board. They shook hands, and Spider-Man No Way Home will be an MCU movie, and Doctor Strange will be involved because of the multiverse. And Alfred Molina even said that it's the same exact character from that universe. So it is involving that universe to some capacity. And I think with Loki, with everything that happened in Loki, it kind of allows for it to happen with Sylvie stabbing He Who Remains. And that episode that you kept saying that you really like, with all those different versions of Loki that don't look like him, that don't look like our protagonist, and even Sylvie being a woman, it helps to make sense having different Peter Parkers that don't look like each other, that have completely different.
Like Spider Pig. Yeah, I guess the Loki thing was very similar to that.
Yeah.
Alligator or whatever it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were asking Alfred Molina about it, like, how are you going to explain, like, me dying in the river? And the director of the movie was like, he said something like, in this universe, nobody really dies, which is kind of true because Endgame brought back Gamora via time travel. Yeah. They brought back Loki.
Fortunately, though, I don't like that. That's one criticism I have of, I guess, superhero stuff in general, or a lot of fantasy stuff, whatever, sci-fi stuff, like.
Yeah.
Star Wars, everything like that, like characters just not dying and staying dead does lessen the impact. If someone does die, it does hamper the storytelling.
Well, it does. I agree with you there 100%, but I get why they did it a little bit in the MCU. I just hope they don't do it that often. They brought back Gamora, they brought back Loki. I think Sylvie will become more of a character in this franchise than our protagonist. Loki. I mean, he's still alive, but
is Black Widow gonna come back as like a different version, like Scarlett Johansson? Like, this universe is Black Widow.
I mean, they could.
Me too, but I wouldn't put it past them to do that.
Yeah,
something like that.
I wouldn't put it past them either, but I hope they do the character justice by letting it be what it is. You should check out Black Widow the movie though. Like they.
I'm going to. I'll watch it.
So
Oh, speaking of, we could do like a. I was thinking like just now. Well, I was talking off mic with you about doing live reactions and stuff like on Twitch or whatever. We could do like a watch along or something. Maybe that could be fun.
if we have the resources for it, then sure, we could do that.
Well, we can't like. I mean, we just have to watch it on our own. Like, I can't put the. It'll get taken down, copyright, all that stuff. I can't have the actual movie playing, but it'd just be us watching it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then, so if you want to follow along, you have to press play yourself. You know, like a movie commentary, basically. Yeah. But it'll be like a watch along. Like, I'm watching it for the first time, then you can fill me in on stuff or whatever.
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah, let's talk more about that off the record. Yeah, but I'm for it. Yeah, you're on.
You can even do it for Captain Marvel since I haven't seen that one yet either.
Oh, you haven't? Wow, the movie is too.
We talked about that in another episode, and I think our Wanda Vision one where that kept coming up because that had some relevance.
Okay, yeah, let's we'll
I haven't seen the last Spider-Man either, so like I just said, so there's a couple ones. If I want to catch me up on MCU, like a spinoff thing here.
Seems like there's a lot of catching up for you to do. I mean, I guess it's fine because you're a casual comic book fan. That's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong.
I'm not a comic book fan at all of like the actual reading the books, but casual superhero movie fan.
Yeah, well that's the thing. Like I grew up more on the cartoons. I have read some of the comic books, but most of my nostalgia comes from like growing up watching the cartoons.
I know there's people like there's some people that I mean, I think the majority of people are like that are comic book fans like the movies too, but I think MCU is doing a good job. But I have heard some people too that like don't like the MCU movies and they think the the book storylines are way better or whatever.
Generally speaking, I think the MCU is pretty great, but it's not perfect. It's not immune to criticism. Like
obviously not. From a point,
they can. Here's the thing, bro. The majority of everything the MCU has put out, people love it. People, it doesn't matter how much you or I, especially, criticize it. Because people will pay to watch this stuff. People will go to watch it, and that's fine.
Well, that's partially part of why I haven't seen all these ones either, like Captain Marvel or like the last Spider-Man, like because I got kind of sick of it, and then these shows have renewed my interest a little bit because there's so much stuff though, and it starts to get a little samey. I mean, that's an issue too,
Yeah, I mean, with the multiverse is something kind of new though, so that allows for quite a different level of storytelling, so.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that like the majority of their audience, and it's a big audience, will enjoy it, and that's perfectly fine. But because I am a harsh critic, they won't get away with telling these stories without facing criticism from me. Not that it matters. I'm just saying like that's just how it is. But overall,
watch out, Feige. Mind your P's and Q's.
Feige should call me. I can help him with some good ideas.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be right on the line.
All right, but going back to the question you asked me about like follow-ups, like the effects Loki will have on this in this universe, the MCU, not just as a franchise but also as a story, right, as an ongoing story. Spider-Man: No Way Home. Next, I think, is Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, and it says it right there in the title what that movie is going to be. So.
It's gonna be madness.
Oh yeah, Elizabeth Olsen, aka Wanda, Scarlet Witch, will be in that movie.
We think she might be the villain, even.
I think she will be the villain, and I'm pretty sure it may not have been announced, but I think Tom Hiddleston, aka Loki, and Sylvie will be in that movie as well. So they might all be in that movie, and it makes sense because technically Sylvie created the multiverse. She recreated it, I guess, right?
By killing him, yeah.
Yeah. So. In that final scene, like we see this space branch behind He Who Remains his window. Was that supposed to be the sacred timeline? Like that's like a literal thing. So if you traveled there, would it you know what I mean? Or was it just like imagery? Was that all it was?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I was taking it to be real, but yeah, who knows? Imagery might make more sense, but.
So Sophia DiMartino, I think that's
Sophia. Okay.
Yeah. So
I recognize the name for the character. She hit the damn jackpot here. She's gonna be in all these movies and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure if she and Tom Hiddleston are going to be in the next Doctor Strange movie. I'm not entirely sure, but it would make sense for them to be. And Elizabeth Olsen for sure is going to be in it as well. So there were hints of multiverse in WandaVision, but it was full on a thing with Loki, right? And then And after that is, of course, as we spoke about, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Kang the Conqueror is the main villain of that movie, but I have a feeling that won't be the last of we see of that actor and that character. Okay, so both of these movies are pretty far out. Spider-Man No Way Home is supposed to come out in December. It could get pushed back because I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news, but the Delta variant, we talk about variants in this show, right? But the Delta variant of the coronavirus.
Doctor Strange and the Delta variant coming 2025.
So yeah, so because it seems to be unfortunately getting a little bit worse, Sony might decide to push back Spider-Man No Way Home, which would push back the rest of the slate of the MCU possibly. I think Doctor Strange is supposed to come out next year, and Ant-Man might be 2022 or it could be 2023. I don't know, but like it's way far off. Like, you know, the effects of this show happen anyway. So yeah, I guess that pretty much wraps up like almost everything that I wanted to go through here. Was there anything else that you wanted to put out there? Like the last thing I wanted to do was do a little bit of comparing with the previous MCU shows.
Yeah, we kind of did that already. I mean, yeah. I guess like, yeah. No, I mean, no, yeah, I think it's just a debate. You know, our whole conversation is somewhat a little bit of a debate over what the merits of a show based on, well, its place in the whole, how much it needs to correspond with the whole universe or the whole canon, and then versus like what the merits of it on itself. So on the latter one, on itself, I think it mainly achieved, it was a solid B+ to me. It didn't that hook that Wanda Vision has was really great for me personally as like a TV fan and like knowing a lot of the history of TV and shows and stuff. That like it's going to be hard for another show of these Marvel shows to like hook me in with something like that one did. But as far as Loki's concerned, yeah, I would say I would give it a solid B+. And like I was excited to I was like ready to watch it every week. I'm not like sitting in front of. I didn't get to watch everyone on the same day it came out, but I was like, oh, I need to watch Loki, like, you know. And I liked Owen Wilson a lot. I thought he was a good. I mentioned it briefly before, but I thought his energy in the show was a good counterbalance, and a little bit different than we've seen in these Marvel stuff. And there was some decent comedy overall. It was not even as comedic as I thought it was going to be, honestly. Especially from the preview and from the character, but there's still some decent comedy in there. And as far as like the writing, I don't think writing's only about in service of the plot line of the larger story. Like it's also about the characters too and interactions and dialogue. So that was a little better than the other, you know, the setting up stuff. So and like And I did like how I mentioned it. I don't know if I explained myself that well about saying how I thought it was more like a TV show than other ones, but like even like the being back at the TVA offices, whatever, like kind of having that as like the main area, like the main place they're going back to, that makes it feel more of like a show where you're always like, because ultimately even
the TVA headquarters, you mean?
Yeah, headquarters. Like most shows do have obviously smaller budgets than film, so even on this large of a scale, like it is like a TV show is like they are like in one, typically going back to one location a lot because that's how they film stuff, you know. So that made it feel like more like a show to me as well, which I liked. Yeah. So
B+, you say, does that translate to like a 8.5 out of 10 on a scale?
Yes. I mean, if it's a 10-point scale, I don't think I would give it as high as an 8.5. No, I would probably say 7.5 or 8 out of 10.
7.5 or 8. Okay, so that's very generous compared to what I'm about to give it. But
yeah, I figured.
All right, so you kind of did your comparison with the other shows. I didn't do that all that much, so I'll go ahead and do that now and then give you my rating. So I would rank it this way: WandaVision, then Falcon, and then Loki. And here's the reason for that.
So in actual order of when they've come out, they're descending for you right now. It's not a good sign.
Yeah, and there are going to be more. There are going to be more MCU TV shows later this year, apparently. One is Hawkeye, one is Miss Marvel. I don't know if they're both coming out this year. There's also She-Hulk, so a lot of content.
Okay.
So WandaVision, I thought was really creative. It was original and different. It was pretty cool. It was a cool take for this franchise to do, right? My main issues with it, main issues were, you know, the finale, the pacing was bad, and then the whole Ralph Boner fake out. I hated that. That ruined the show for me. But besides that, I thought the show was solid, definitely solid. Despite, you know, characters not facing consequences like they should, but you know, that's, I guess that kind of goes with what the future is going to hold in store. If it does, if not, then the show, I guess, still loses points. But overall, I think it's WandaVision was the best MCU TV show, Marvel Studios TV show so far. Next is Falcon. I thought it was okay. I know a lot of people didn't like it because of how things handled, and they were right, but I still liked it. I still enjoyed the show. I thought it was really great. It's just like I was saying about Loki, is that it aimed for higher storytelling, like it aimed for thought-provoking themes, which
higher social messages, yeah.
Right, but the execution of it was not as well enough as the introduction of these themes that they were doing, and that's why it kind of fell a little bit flat.
Yeah.
Loki, on the other hand, I started off this podcast by telling you how much they convoluted what was already established about time travel in this franchise. That's what made the show already kind of like tuning down for me, like, or just making me like it less. Like after episode 2 is when I started liking the show a little bit less, and so much of it is exposition, so much of it still I don't really understand. For example, I know you probably don't remember too much about Avengers Endgame, but that whole movie was about obtaining the Infinity Stones from the past, okay? And Steve Rogers' mission at the end of it was to return the stones from where they got it. But if they had the whole movie about obtaining the obtaining the Infinity Stones, I would figure that returning them should be just as difficult of a mission as obtaining them, right? But they conveniently show that it's not that, like he's able to do it without a hitch. You know, they needed that to happen because they just didn't want to have a mini series of Captain America returning the stones, which I feel like would still be a good story to tell. Hishe, I don't know if you're familiar with Hishe, which is How It Should Have Ended. It's another YouTube channel. They actually have a video of it, which I thought was kind of funny. But Loki the TV show also establishes how the TVA resets the timeline, whatever that means. If it means what I think it is, like destroying the timeline from existing, if that's what that means, then that means the Ancient One was right not to trust Bruce with handing over the Time Stone, because her reality would be doomed to become nothingness if the TVA pruning it means erasing it from existence. But the bigger problem with that is, if the TVA erases branch timelines from existing entirely, how would Steve Rogers be able to return to those alternate universes to return the stones? See, that's not really answered. It's just that's just another whole thing that I'm explaining to you about. Like, I don't have to go through, like, you don't have to relive all the criticisms that I was yelling at you for the last hour. All of these things mixed together is why I would not say Loki is solid of a TV show at all. The best things of the show were the acting. Like, the acting was phenomenal as usual. I also really like the soundtrack, the music, and
yeah, we didn't touch on that. The music was very good, yeah, and the score as well.
Super unique, arguably more unique than the soundtrack for WandaVision. I liked it a lot. It was really cool. I'd like to see more of that in the future. But that's it. That's all that the show has going for it. How did you feel? Did you feel anything about the romance between Loki and Sylvia or not? Because I just didn't care that much.
No, I just thought it was funny or interesting that they're basically the same, two versions of the same person. It's so masturbatory, but that's fitting of the Loki character.
Or incestuous. People compared it to Game of Thrones too. So, but I don't really.
But is it even incest? Because when you're with yourself, that's why I said masturbatory. Like it's like more than it's. So I thought that's a funny element, but of like their actual relationship.
Well, I guess people would call it, like, people would argue that it's in a sense incest. That's like, you know, it's the same genes as you, so it's the equivalent of you hooking up. I guess so. Yeah. Identical twin or whatever. I mean, I didn't care that much about it. Just as a different thing, as just another thing. But I would.
No, they may be relying too much on the impact of that, like that it was changing Loki's. Hiddleston Loki's like
variants,
it was affecting his actions maybe more than it should at the end of like they did. I don't know.
I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 10.
Damn. What do you remember what your scores for the other ones were, or my scores for that matter?
I think we were close on Wanda Vision. I gave that an 8 and either an 8 or an 8.5. I think it was an 8.5 that I gave Wanda Vision. Falcon I gave like a 6 or a 6.5. So this is a huge drop for me, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How low can MCU TV go? We'll see. I guess it keeps going. So what we think? Hawkeye's in it. It's not going to be like Jeremy Renner Hawkeye, right? It's like a different character as Hawkeye.
Jeremy Renner might be in it, but there's a new Hawkeye. Because
Right.
they're going with a bunch of young new characters. So I think there's going to be a new Hawkeye, like his protege, not his daughter, like just a different character that becomes the new Hawkeye. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel these shows stack up to previous Marvel TV shows? They're not necessarily MCU. Like technically, the Netflix shows are not.
I didn't really like those shows for the most part, or at least I got sick of them real quick. I mean, Daredevil, I didn't even finish. I don't think I got through the first season on it.
Wow.
I liked the Jessica Jones first season I watched. It was not bad. I think I might have watched the Luke Cage whole first season. I didn't watch that. Did those both have sequel seasons? I think.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, I didn't watch the sequel season for him. They're just too. Those ones felt too much like TV shows in a negative way toward me, like the opposite of of what I was saying about Loki, where like they were too repetitive, or they're so dark too, like the whole dark kind of vibe. I like the brighter MCU style vibe. And then yeah, it's just I just wasn't that into the aesthetic of them. Is the main criticism I have, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's other ones. I don't know. I don't think
There's Agents of Shield on ABC, like on cable.
That's a different. Okay, I never watched that. No interest.
Yeah, I never caught either of those shows, but
I mean, it helps with these Disney Plus ones that like 6-episode seasons or whatever. Like they're kind of like event type stuff. So that's more why I'm more willing to, like, if there's like if they're like the Falcon 22 episode season here, I'll pass on that.
I would say that I guess part of the things that harmed the Netflix series,
I guess the Netflix ones weren't that long, whether they're 10 or 12 episodes or something.
That's the thing. If they were 10 episodes instead of 13, maybe the pacing for those shows would have been better.
But they're long. They're all hour long too, or whatever. So that's too long. Yeah, that's too long. I guess Loki ones were almost an hour.
Some of them, not all of them. Some of them were. Yeah. Some of them.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, okay. But speaking of Daredevil, I mean, that's the only one that I watched to completion. And there's a rumor that actor, Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock, the lawyer, will show up in Spider-Man No Way Home. You haven't seen Far From Home, but I guess one spoiler thing, Peter Parker does need a lawyer. So there is some credence to that theory.
I see. Okay, that would make sense. Yeah.
All right. So I guess that pretty much wraps up like everything about discussing Loki, the TV show, right? I think that's just about everything.
I'm good.
That I can remember. All right, yeah, I'm good too. Okay, so I will link some of the videos that new rockstars have. I'll link them in the description. I will of course link Podrew's YouTube channel in the description.
That's right, Drew's Views, baby. Watch along as I watch some TV, some cartoons, some anime, all type of stuff.
Okay, so for those of you who have tuned in and listened, thank you for listening to us, especially me rant and tear this TV apart. You have been listening to For Hot Targaryen and
Podrew.
So catch us again in our next collaboration.
All right, peace.